RTX 5070 Ti laptops perform well in games. So is it worth spending even more money to get an RTX 5080 laptop instead? I've compared both in 25 games at 3 resolutions to find out if the 5080 is worth it. The RTX 5080 laptop GPU has 30% more CUDA, Tensor, and RT cores compared to the lower tier 5070 Ti laptop GPU. The 5080 also has 33% more VRAM capacity, and it's got more memory bandwidth, a larger memory interface, and the 5080 is able to use more power too, right up to 175 watts, versus the 140 from the 5070 Ti, which in turn allows the 5080 to clock higher. More power equals more performance. This graph shows the 3DMark TimeSpy graphics score from each GPU at different power levels. With the same power limits, the 5080 in purple was always outperforming the 5070 Ti in red, as expected. But this shows us that a 5070 Ti running at its full 140 watts starts to outperform a 5080 running at 120 watts. So technically, a 5070 Ti laptop could end up outperforming a 5080 laptop depending on the power limits. And the power limits depend on the laptop the GPU is in. The 5070 Ti can go as low as 60 watts, which we would only see in thinner and lighter laptops. But for some reason, the laptop I've tested doesn't go below 65 watts, while the 5080 can't go below 80 watts. With both GPUs running at 80 watts, the 5080 laptop is scoring 9.6% higher than the 5070 Ti. And if we run both at 140 watts, the highest supported by the 5070 Ti, the 5080 is still scoring 9.3% better. But because the 5080 is allowed to use more power, by the time it maxes out at 175 watts, it's now 20% ahead of the maxed out 5070 Ti at 40 watts, which is how I've done the game testing in this video. I could have limited the 5080 laptop to 140 watts to keep the power limits fair, but my goal in this comparison is to compare a best case 5080 against a best case 5070 Ti. It would have been nice if Nvidia let the 5070 Ti use a bit more power, but I guess they didn't want it stepping on the toes of the 5080 too much. If you want the extra power, you've got to spend more. Now, to do this testing, I'm using XMG's Neo 16 laptop to make this as fair as possible. Apart from the GPU difference, these laptops are exactly the same. Same CPU, same RAM, same SSD, same cooling. And as you probably know, gaming laptops with 5070 Ti or 5080 graphics are not cheap. But if we find any with good sales, we'll add them to the gaminglaptop.deals website. Check it out with the link below to save money on your next gaming laptop. The RTX 5080 laptop GPU in purple was using 17 to 19% more power at the wall across 3 different games. Which makes sense, it's a higher powered GPU. And sure enough, the 5070 Ti in red was running near its 140 watt limit, while the 5080 was close to 175 watts. The 5080 laptop in purple ends up slightly better from a performance per watt perspective in 2 of the 3 games, but it's close. So the 5080 uses more power in games, but this doesn't seem to be going to waste relative to the extra FPS it delivers in games. But more power equals more heat. And with the same air cooler in both laptops, the 5080 laptop in purple was running a little warmer. But interestingly, I measured higher clock speeds on the 5070 Ti laptop in red, despite Nvidia's spec sheet saying the 5080 should be slightly higher in this regard. But this will depend on the workload. Both laptops have the same 99 watt-hour battery, and the lower tier 5070 Ti laptop GPU lasted 14% longer in a game. Alright, games next. Let's start out with Hogwarts Legacy, which had one of the biggest improvements out of all 25 games tested on the 5080, with a 25% higher average frame rate at 1440p and 33% higher at 4K. Though the 1% lows weren't really any different. There wasn't a difference at 1080p either, presumably as that resolution just isn't GPU heavy enough to stress the GPUs. Spider-Man 2 was interesting. At very high settings, this game was also 25% faster on the 5080 laptop at 1440p, and with ray tracing and upscaling on, we're seeing a similar 22% boost with the 5080 at 1440p. But at 4K, the 5070 Ti starts to choke. I thought it might be running out of VRAM, but it's using 10 gigs in this test, so there should still be a little free. The Last of Us Part 2 was another game that had had a bigger difference at 4K, with the 5080 28% ahead of the 5070 Ti. So I checked the VRAM again, but it was using 9 to 10 of the 12 available gigs in my test. I think the 5070 Ti is more suited to 1440p gaming, and at that resolution, the 5080 was 16% faster, though you could of course use DLSS to pump up the frame rates. I got the 5070 Ti up to 85 FPS with DLSS on performance here. Of course, some games on the other hand don't care anywhere near as much about the GPU difference, like Baldur's Gate 3, which was only 3 to 4% faster on the 5080 laptop at 1080p and 1440p, one of the smallest improvements out of all 25 games tested. But then 4K was 21% faster with the 5080, as we finally start to become more GPU bound there. Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't running too well on either laptop at 4K ultra settings, but the 5080 was 22% ahead of the 5070 Ti. Frame rates actually end up better with the higher ray tracing ultra preset when we combine it with DLSS. But at all three resolutions, the 5080 had a below average improvement over the 5070 Ti when compared to the 25 games I've tested. Instead of wasting your time individually talking through the rest of the 20 games tested, I'm just going to quickly skip through the rest of the results on screen now, so feel free to pause the video if you want to take a closer look at any specific game. The reason I test so many games is so that we can get a much more accurate average result from a wider selection of games, which allows us to draw a better conclusion. In other words, more data equals more better. Let's take a look at the average differences next. On average, over all 25 games tested, at 1080p, the RTX 5080 laptop GPU was 13% faster compared to the RTX 5070 Ti laptop GPU. Some games only saw minimal differences, while best case, the 5080 was up to 22% faster than the 5070 Ti. 1080p just isn't GPU intensive enough to get the most from these GPUs, so let's move on. Stepping up to 1440p, and the 5080 laptop was now close to 18% faster on average, so a bit more of a lead over the 5070 Ti compared to 1080p, with the best game now seeing a 25% higher average frame rate, but there are still some games with only minor differences. At 4K, the RTX 5080 laptop GPU was now 23% faster compared to the 5070 Ti. But the best case in Spider-Man 2 with ray tracing is a fairly massive outlier. I'm not saying it's not valid, because it is. But even if you choose to ignore that one-off massive difference, the 5080 was still almost 21% faster at 4K. This is how things look if we average the FPS from all 25 games together. This makes it easier to visually see the differences between both laptops. The 5070 Ti can definitely be used to run games at 4K, but you'd want to make use of upscaling features like DLSS to get a better experience. So then, is it worth paying more money to get an RTX 5080 gaming laptop, or should you save some cash and get a 5070 Ti instead? Prices of both will of course change over time, so check those links below the video for updates and to see if there are any current sales. If laptops with either of these GPUs do have a good sale, we'll be sure to add them to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the best sales, so make sure that you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop. At the time of recording in late June, the exact XMG Neo 16 that I've tested here with RTX 5070 Ti graphics goes for €2,749, while the higher-end RTX 5080 configuration is an extra €595. Or the way I like to think about it is almost 22% more money for the 5080. Meanwhile, in the US on Best Buy, RTX 5070 Ti laptops start from $1,900, while RTX 5080 laptops start from $2,500. So $600 or 32% more money in that case to jump up to the 5080 if you're on a tighter budget. Remember that at 1440p, the 5080 was almost 18% faster than the 5070 Ti. While QHD Plus is the most common screen resolution laptops with these GPUs come with, and 1440p is close. So in the case of the XMG, spending 22% more money for the 18% FPS improvement and extra VRAM doesn't sound unreasonable. From a cost per frame perspective, there's basically no difference if you're playing at 4K. The 5070 Ti offers better value when going by the Best Buy prices though, as the price gap between the 5070 Ti and 5080 is bigger there. But still, the 5080 isn't that much worse in terms of value if you want better performance. Ultimately, it comes back to the actual performance difference in games. If a 5070 Ti laptop costs $2,000, for example, and a 5080 laptop costs $2,400, that's 20% more money to get an 18% FPS boost, which isn't too bad if you've got the money and want the extra performance. Plus, the 5080's extra VRAM will be nice to have over the next few years as games continue to get more demanding. I suspect the 12 gigs in the 5070 Ti will be a good sweet spot for a few years. But I can't predict the future. All I can do is say that the 16 gigs will hold up better over time in that regard. And I did already see the 5070 Ti using more than 10 gigs in some games. At the end of the day, the 5070 Ti laptop GPU is very capable for 1440p gaming at high settings. So if you can't afford to jump up to the 5080, don't worry too much, you'll still have a good time playing games on the 5070 Ti. On the other hand, if you're still after even more performance, then check out this one next, where I've compared the RTX 5080 laptop against the RTX 5090 laptop. The performance difference is actually smaller than what we've seen in this video, but the price difference is bigger. So find out if the 5090 is worth it before spending all your money over here next.